Hi, I'm Kevin Jones with the Dodge Jones Injury Law Firm. I'm here to answer some questions that are frequently asked by folks that come to see me about their workers' comp claims. We are a personal injury and workers' comp law firm in Eastern North Carolina with offices in Bern, Jacksonville, Greenville, Morehead City and Beauford. One of those questions that I get has to do with an employer who does not have workers' comp insurance. And so the first question is there anything that I can even do? They don't have insurance. The answer to that depends on the particulars of your case, but they may very well be subject to the Workers' Comp Act. Even though they don't have workers' comp insurance, the employer may be personally responsible to pay those workers' comp benefits in your case. In order to figure that out, you would certainly need to sit down and talk with a workers' comp lawyer about it. I'm happy to do that, but the bottom line is, if they're subject to the Workers' Comp Act, and in general we're talking 3 or more regular employees. They don't have to be 3 or more full-time employees for businesses in North Carolina. And sometimes those employees can be people that you don't necessarily realize are employees. If you've got a small mom and pop business and one spouse is the owner of the business and the other spouse may be handling the paperwork and doing the bookkeeping and is paid as an employee, and then there are 2 other people, then that company may be subject to the Workers' Comp Act, and you may have a claim there even though they're saying that you don't. Depending on how their corporate structure is, even the owner may be considered an employee under certain circumstances. There's no, it's a case-by-case basis. You really have to dig into it and figure out the status of everybody that's working for the company, because these small companies, sometimes it's the difference between 2 employees and 3 is the difference in whether or not you can recover in a workers' comp claim. When we do handle these kinds of claims, when we do feel like, and before I forget, it's different for farm operations. For them, it's 10 or more non-seasonal employees, which it's just an exception. It's a difference for farm operations in North Carolina, and it does mean that a lot more small farmers, small business, small farms, would not be subject to the Act than other types of business in North Carolina, but it's still something that we can look into. And sometimes you can have, even with these small farms, you can have a bit of a shell game. You can have really one business that's being operated as 3 or 4 with 3 or 4 different corporate names, and that doesn't necessarily get this employer out from under the Workers' Comp Act if it's determined that the only reason that they're doing that, dividing up their farm operation into separate businesses, is to keep everybody below 10 employees, but they've got 30 or 40 altogether. There may be a way around that if that's what their game is. So don't just assume that you don't have a claim. It's something that you need to talk with an expert before you make a decision about whether to pursue the claim, and that's something that I'm happy to talk with you about. But if it is an uninsured employer who should have had workers' comp insurance and didn't, and we feel like that they should have been subject to the Act and they owe the benefits, and you have what's considered a compensable or a covered injury at work, then you pursue the claim directly against the employer. There are always issues with, do they have the funds to pay? Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. Sometimes the best we can do is to get whatever we can from that employer as they go bankrupt, but at least we can get, if we win the case, we can get the debt of all the medical bills off of our client. If nothing else, sometimes that's all we can do then, but at least, at minimum, if that's what should happen, that debt really should be the employer's and not the employee's, and there is a way to do that. So if you have been injured at work and you believe that there's a possibility that your employer should have been covered with insurance under workers' comp but wasn't, or maybe you just don't know, we can find that out for you as well, then we're happy to talk with you and talk to you about how those kinds of claims are pursued. They are somewhat different in another respect too, and that is if the state of North Carolina believes that that employer should have had workers' comp insurance, they will also step in with one of their lawyers from the Attorney General's office to prosecute that employer for failing to have workers' comp. And they can be of great help in determining the number of employees based on information that they have in different ways that can be a great help in helping us prove the case. So that's something to, when you're injured at work and you're either told by the employer, I don't have workers' comp, you're on your own, or you just don't know and nobody's returning calls and you can't figure out if they've got insurance and your employer won't give you any information, we can figure that out for you, decide whether or not you've got a claim. We're happy to do that. Give us a call. I'll sit down and talk with you about your case and see what we can do to help.
Thank you.